Gents, if you could start trying to find a seat and sit down, we might get started for the evening. All right, everyone, we might get started. Look, welcome everybody. It's awesome to be back in this room after such a long time being away. I make an apology for Nick. He's just moved house very recently, and so he's a very busy man. He couldn't make it tonight. We are going to attempt to get him on screen in a minute to just say a few words, but for the rest of the night, you've got me. It may be a bumpy ride, my first rodeo. So I'm doing my best to just try and figure out these presentations and how to get them to work. As always, look, we'd love to thank our affiliates. We wouldn't be here without them, and welcome them all. We also welcome all our industry associations that are here and help us out with information during the year. Also, our corporate members. Look, I still feel like this is a little light on. I highly encourage any corporations that are out there, any consultant businesses that aren't corporate members, to get involved. As you know, me being the manager of the education, I'm all keen for that kind of cash, and we've certainly got lots of things that we can do with it. If you're not sure, any of that corporation membership funds do get put directly into education, so that it's a way that you get some benefits apart from being at the meetings out of your subscription. I would also like to welcome the FPA. I haven't had a chance to say good day to any of them tonight yet, but we've got these gentlemen here tonight on behalf of New South Wales Fire Brigades. So Murray Mackney, Mark Porter, Michael Gleeson, Matthew Cox, Duke Ismail and Damon Chamberlain. Damon's going to be saying a few words a bit later in the evening about Storts couplings and some changes in that sphere. Would also like to, to introduce Bill Lee, if Bill is here. Bill is here, excellent, welcome along. Bill's had a big hand in creating some residential sprinkler standards along with his work at the FBA, and we will be covering a fair bit of that in the rehow talk tonight, so I'm sure there'll be some questions about plastics and compliance that come along with that. So before I get into the meeting agenda, let me see if I can get Nick. Nick Soden, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. All right, can you hear me?
All right, so we've got the audio working.
Yeah.
If I can duplicate that screen. No.
Not yet.
Renee go. All right, well, Nick, you're on audio. Sorry.
That's all right. We can just stick with audio. That works. And we also have proved tonight, after 5 or 6 years of people asking for it, that we can actually do a live presentation at the Kirribilli Club and stream it to members. So I think we've got 4 or 5 members dialed in from around Australia at the moment. Yeah, looks like it's working well. But yeah, sorry I couldn't make it tonight. I'll be down for the what's the next one? The May meeting, and I'll see you all there. So I hope it's a good night for you all, and you get some good food and have some good chats. So thank you.
You are looking better, mate. For those that don't know, Nick had a bit of a run-in with his bees in the last week or so. Spray painting around his beehives, and they didn't like it, so copped a few stings to the face, a little bit swollen, but good to see you've recovered, mate. All right, now, can I get back? Right. Sorry, Renee, you able to help out? Apologies, everyone. So just want to get that PowerPoint back to there. Took the duplicate off. Windows P. Yeah, just on that one. How can we get that back to the full screen?
I think at the top, if you click display settings and go switch screens, move your mouse up.
Oh, yeah.
Move it up higher. There's like, yeah, click that, and then do swap presenter view and slideshow.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'll leave you to it.
Hey, all right, back. Okay, Nick, can you see on the Zoom meeting, can you see that general meeting page?
Yep, it's all working again. Yep.
Excellent. All right, sorry about that. So this is a quick look at what we're going to be looking at tonight. We've got, I'll run through a couple of minutes that Nick's put together for us. He's certainly still done all the legwork for me and prepared this presentation. I just get to read it out, but we'll go through a couple of the emails that we've received and a couple of the issues we're looking at. Then we've got Saniflow that's going to look at their compact sewer pump out systems, followed by Rehow that, like I said, is going to be looking at the residential sprinkler market, and then followed up by Fire and Rescue New South Wales looking at the storts. So I'll run through these pretty quickly. I don't want to get bogged down in too many because we do tend to often go over time. Roof gutter design, there's an email that came from Ken Sutherland, who's a bit of an authority on stormwater, about connecting multiple downpipes out of gutters into a single downpipe dropper, and how the flow in that downpipe is affected coming from different gutters. So Nick, I think, is going to forward that on to our membership. And I guess if you've got any questions, you can always contact Ken or have a look on his website. We've had a trade waste CPD event with ACO. That was, I think, at the end of last year. We've had a few early this year. as well. There's a bit further down, I'll jump forward. You can see that we've already had Zip and Kembla. We find they've been pretty successful, still getting good attendance at those for people to get their points up. And as you probably know, there's more points to get for your CPD now. I guess it's a little more flexible in how you obtain those and where you can get them from. But CPD, Martine's still doing her best to keep those happening and providing an avenue for you guys to keep up to date. Guys and girls, I should say. ABCB, so there's a discussion paper issued about building design documentation. It's out for public consultation. I'm not 100% sure when that one finishes, but there have been quite a lot coming out of the ABCB, particularly with the updates that they're looking at over, well, probably the next couple of years, to be honest, by the time they all get implemented. We had Halgam presenting in the November meeting, and that was largely on trade waste products. The Australian Standard 2419.1 has been out for public comment and has since closed. Can I get a show of hands of anyone who made comment? One? Okay. The next one there, the ABCB is consultation on regulatory impact statement for the lead in plumbing products. That is also closed, but I'm not sure how many of us had it. Were any of the manufacturers or suppliers here? Did you guys provide some feedback on that one? Yeah, excellent. Thanks very much on behalf of the industry. The next one there is about the EP&A amendments. So that'll be to the Act and the regulation. That'll come later in the year. Nick's currently sitting in meetings once a fortnight on a committee that's helping to figure out how all that happens. Some of it is still a bit grey. I guess as soon as we know, you'll know. And that's looking at some major changes around July. Education. I might just skip that one because I will. There's a slide a bit later on. I'll go into that a little bit more detail. There is the New South Wales government has released a new template for annual fire safety statements. Probably doesn't affect too many of us in this room, but we thought we'd put it in there. It was an email that came across the committee's desk, so just to let you know that is around. We have a general meeting coming up in Adelaide on the 16th of March. Feel free to log in and join that if you like. I think they're going to try and do what we're doing tonight. It will be face-to-face in the room, but if we can get the Zoom meeting going as well and record it like we're doing tonight, then there is an avenue for people that may have missed it to come back and have a look through those sessions at a later date. The ABCB's currently got 3 consultations open in response to the building confidence report. So I mentioned that already. If any of the members here, you should be getting emails regularly. They're coming thick and fast. So Emily's being awesome at keeping everyone's email inbox full. Hopefully you find some time to get through them. There's a lot of reading. I think some affect us more than others. So you might want to sort of pick and choose which ones you comment on or which ones you have a look at. But I think one of the major ones, which I'll touch on again later, is talking about how we're categorised and what we're called and what we can sign off. So like I said, I'll come back to that shortly. The other one there is the Canberra meeting on the 15th of April coming up. So gladly we're seeing a few of our other states getting some good attendance at those as well. So fortnightly CPD sessions. So the iterative water features from South Australian Government, that was actually on today. So if you didn't attend, you missed it. Oh, it didn't happen. Oh, sorry. Okay. All right. That's right. Oh, you've got an opportunity to see that if you do want to join in. 23rd of March, we have open at the moment. So if there are any suppliers or affiliates here that would like to have a CPD session with our members, please let us know. You know, it's sort of what you would typically do in your in-office lunch and learn style thing. Obviously being online opens you up to a lot bigger audience across Australia. So if you can, please give us an email. And Sunnyflow on the 6th of April is already booked in. So keep an eye on your inbox for the invites for those. Excuse me. So we've got a slide here from Zern. I think Lawrence, I did say Lawrence here. Yep. So Lawrence Drummond from Zern. Well, sorry, Reese. Both, bit of both. Lawrence actually came into our office last week and explained what's been happening there. So Zern itself has somewhat sort of pulled out of Australia, but not really. They've come up with a deal with Reese to sell all of their products through the Reese stores. So you won't necessarily find Zern offices around, but we certainly still do have a contact. His name is Lawrence Drummond. He's going to be able to answer any technical questions you have for any of the valves or products that Zern may produce. I think you said you've got one other that's still sort of in the same basket, working in the Reese sphere, but sort of specialist for Zern that's working on the testing and approvals of any of their valves. So just, yeah, be advised that they are still around, and if you need to find them, track down Reese instead. It's all correct? Do you want to? Still the same product, still the same. From specification standpoint, all the information engineers and through the Reese group as well. So we're working hand in hand to continue that support through the market. So essentially for the contractors and for hydraulic consultants, nothing has changed. Thank you. Awesome. Thanks, Lawrence. Thank you. All right, so diploma. I'll try and keep it short because I'm quite passionate about it at the moment. Look, we've had hiccups. Like, we are so keen to get this going. TAFE is keen to get this going. We've got 100+ students now that are keen to get this going. Unfortunately, it's actually the Cert 4 that's holding us up a little bit, not the diploma. We are still in the process of preparing documents for the diploma, but we've got enough to get it started. The hitch that's holding us up at the moment, when there was a new training package released late last year, the Cert 4 was deemed non-equivalent. What that means is there's a new set of documents. TAFE's still gone through those documents and updated them all, but it goes through a much more rigorous QA process through TAFE, and it's got to go back to ASQA, who's the governing body over education. And yeah, jumping through hurdles and red tape is slowing it down. So it's coming. Look, we were really hoping to get it all kicked off with the Cert 4 in term 1 this year, and then term 2 would be the diploma. We've shuffled that back a term, and super hopeful it can now be term 2, starting the Cert 4 and diploma in term 3. So rest assured, we are working our butts out to get this happening, and TAFE's doing a pretty good job, I must say. So yeah, watch this space. If you've got any questions, by all means, give me a call or send me an email to the education email. But Glenn Martin at TAFE has been sending out regular updates. We've got a full list of all the students that are interested, and we've also been putting that info on LinkedIn and our webpage. So hopefully that keeps everyone up to as much up to date as we can. The sales rep of the year, unfortunately, I think the counting has been completed, but the rep couldn't be here tonight. So actually just going to hang on to that. And so I don't know if that's a bit of a disappointment for those guys that are here, but we needed him here to present it. So look, so next one there is George Katoulis. Look, George is, we want to thank George, but he has decided to step down as treasurer. Obviously got a bit too much going on in his world at the moment. He has been working in that role for, I think, in excess of 15 years. And we're very grateful for that work. You know, it's not easy to get volunteers to jump into these roles. So again, he's not here tonight, but look, the committee's going to sort out some kind of gift to say thank you for that extended service. And yeah, hopefully we'll see George soon. So this slide's looking at Reese Max, which is an app which can give you some pretty good information in terms of the cost of various plumbing fittings and equipment. Stereotypically, this is for the trade, but as far as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, the guys from Reese that are here, Lewis, Nick has arranged that if any of our members do want to get access to the app, so that you can, you know, if you're preparing a budget or looking at a fee variation from a plumber, you can use this to jump on and check what the current retail prices are. So if you do want to log in for that, let us know either through Lewis at Reese or through the admin at hcaa.org.au email address. Drafts and standards, as far as we're aware, there are none that are currently out for comment. I think Nick's touched on this one before. So all LPG bottles are going to be changing the thread from a, what is it, left-hand thread to a right-hand thread. It's come off the back of, I think, an explosion in a van a few years ago. And so that's going to start transitioning from 1st of April this year. So probably doesn't affect what we design a great deal, but everyone's going to have to get a different hose for your barbie and gradually start swapping out bottles and stuff like that. So this is what I was talking about in terms of what we're going to be called. So there's some debate in these groups. This is from the ABCB, so it's at a federal level, not at a New South Wales level. Nick's already had some input, but we're actually asking, we need a little subcommittee, probably 2 or 3 people, if anyone has some time available, to push this along and promote what we do and how we do it. Effectively, we're trying to compare ourselves to engineers that have a degree. There were the first iteration of this table pretty well said that if you had a diploma, you cannot do performance solutions. So we're trying to find a way that we can sort of negotiate that with a diploma qualification. And so what that may mean, it might mean more experience, it might mean additional training. We don't know yet. We're going to have to work with government on this, but if anyone can put their hand up, you don't have to do it right now, but if you can email Nick if you're interested, there's sort of some debate that needs to be sorted out. I mean, we don't necessarily want to be called plumbing designers. I think we'd like to elevate ourselves a bit better than that. If you have the diploma at the moment, they're looking at sort of a hydraulic designer and maybe some varying categories. Initially, it was you could only work on certain buildings. What we're trying to push is that with certain experience, you can do TTS, but it's unrestricted on the size of the development that you're working on. And then with even more experience again, that you probably look at having access to being able to sign off performance solutions. So if we can get some members interested, look, I guess just trying to share the load a bit. Nick's a pretty busy man. I'm sort of flat out, and look, so the CPD guys, all the people that currently have roles on the committee are busy. It's all volunteer. So if we can find a couple of people that can get together and then help push this along on a federal level with the ABCB, that would be very much appreciated.
Right, just to support what you're saying, this is an ideal opportunity for anyone who's looking at making a contribution to your industry, and even as a pathway to being on the committee of the HCAA. We're always on the lookout for people who have energy to burn and a bit of passion in their belly, because there's a lot of older guys on the committee who are looking at a pathway to exit. So this is an ideal opportunity for someone to come in, actually understand the inner workings of the HCAA at committee level, but also assist in contributing to this exercise that Rod's talking about. So please feel, if you're having any thought about it, put your hand up and contact Nick. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think it'll end up being a fairly important one. I think if the way that these things get named, or the ability of what you can sign off and what you can't sign off, you know, if that happens without our input, and then it's something that we don't want, then it's really going to hurt us. Particularly in the event of if it does go back to just saying, well, only an engineer can sign off a performance solution, then that leaves a lot of us open to, well, you're going to have to get someone else to sign off your design for you if you're going down that road on a particular project. So it would be great if we can get a few people to get involved in that and help push it along. The water demand project, look, this is still ongoing. I think Nick said hopefully in the next week we'll have approval for the funding for Deakin University to keep going with their studies. As he's mentioned before, that's 33,000 a year for that research project. At the moment, we do have that well, that and some in the bank, which is fantastic. So it's looking like it's going to get some continued support, and hopefully start branching out outside of the residential sphere as well, which would be amazing. The Dodgy Award. So the winner is, where is it? Paul Angus. Oh, yeah, I thought there was going to be a photo there. Oh, okay. Paul Angus, I think you are here. We will arrange to get to a bottle of wine later. I was going to do that earlier, but had a little bit of time caught up in arranging PowerPoints. So we'll sort you out for that one. Thanks for everybody's contributions. Look, that brings us to an end of the formal part, I guess. Next up, we've got Neil Roberts from Saniflow. So Saniflow are going to talk about their packaged pump stations and run us through their products. They've got a range of products, small to I guess, medium size. I'll let him give you all the detail, but please welcome Neil. So just next slide. Just click through on that one. Is that the next one? Yeah. We'll click that. Yep. All good. Thank you.
Okay, welcome everybody. My name's Neil Roberts and I represent Saniflow Pumps along with my colleague Ravi Reddy. He's the good-looking guy up there with a red shirt on at the back. Say hello, Ravi. In 1958, this SFA group invents the small bore macerator pump. All our products are still manufactured in France and Saniflow has been in Australia since 1988. All products are watermark approved and the pumps are sold through reputable plumbing and hardware outlets. The following is just a short 30-second concept video just to explain about our products for people that aren't aware of them.
Living with only one bathroom can be a hassle. With Saniflow, it doesn't have to be that way. Turn the spare room into a luxury ensuite, put a toilet into the man cave, or add a bathroom to a granny flat. With Saniflow, you can create that extra bathroom without costly plumbing work. Just use a Saniflow pump and connect to an existing sewer point. Add your sanitary ware and connect to the water supply. Saniflow.
The Saniflow group has got more than 60 distributors and over 200 products. SFA has sold more than 8 million devices to date, and more than half of these have been sold outside of France. Saniflow has three main product families. We have macerators. A macerator grinds toilet waste with blades or cutter assemblies. There is also inlet points for grey water from showers, basins and baths. It's available in both domestic and commercial options. There's actually a macerator over there on the table for those that can see. That's the one on the left. We also have grey water pumps. A grey water pump is designed to take wastewater from fixtures such as sinks, showers and dishwashers and discharges the waste via a small diameter pipe to the nearest drainage connection. It's also available in both domestic and commercial options. And there's a grey water pump. That's the pump on the right over there, the Sunny Speed. The third in our family is lifting stations. So our lifting station is a larger grey and black water pump. It's used when higher output performance is required. They can take waste from multiple fixtures in demanding commercial or domestic application and are designed to be installed remotely from the fixtures. We don't have any on display, but the typical types are Sanicubic 2s and Sanicom 1s. We often get asked about alarms for our pumps. What happens if they fail? Well, we have alarms for the Saniflow pumps. They're able to be installed into most Saniflow pumps. Most generally, they're installed in office fit-outs for under-sink pumps such as the Sunny Speed or the Sanicom. If the water level rises and the pump fails to cycle, the float will rise, causing an audible alarm to indicate that servicing is required. It can be connected to a building monitoring system as well. We also recently brought in a high-level Sunny alarm, and it has some interlock features, and they include audible and visual alarms. And when a high water level occurs in the pump, the controller shuts down the mains water feed to the sink and the dishwasher, and power is also shut down to the dishwasher, good for high-rise buildings, etc. The solenoid will remain closed and the power to the dishwasher will remain off until the water level in the pump subsides. Another feature of the unit is the power to the controller is switched off. If the power to the solenoid is switched off, the solenoid will close immediately. The next, let's catch up, sorry. The following are a few examples of case studies where we've used our pumps. An early learning centre. The problem is creating a childcare centre in a multi-storey office building where there is no easy access to sewerage. How can an early learning centre install kitchen sinks and toilets required to operate the business? Traditional plumbing is not an option. In this situation, a semi-speed and a Senicom grey water pump and a semi-access macerator pump is the solution. So three separate pumps are the solutions for the early learning centre. Pump solution number one is a semi-speed. The semi-speed grey water pump was used to discharge the wastewater from the sinks in the early learning centre. So the semi-speed got rid of the wastewater from the sinks. Pump solution number two, a semi-access 2 macerator. The semi-access 2 macerator pump is used to remove wastewater from toilets and basins. The semi-access pump allows for easy servicing, which is perfectly suited for a childcare application. So you've only got to pull 4 screws, you pull the lid off and you can service it if there's a blockage. So it makes it easy for servicing. Pump selection 3 was a Senicom 1. The Senicom 1 grey water pump can handle higher volume of water and higher temperature waste, for example, from commercial dishwashers. Case study number 2 was an end-of-trip facility. The objective was to create an end-of-trip facility complete with showers, and it was on the basement, so traditional plumbing wasn't an option. Plumbing needed in the basement of a multi-storey building. So the solution we came up with was a semi-floor pump. The semi-floor pump draws wastewater away from the showers using a special suction technology. So it actually draws the water up. So there is no need to worry about gravity drainage or having to raise the shower tray. So this was good for an end-of-trip facility, which is very common, the showers as such. Case study number 3, and this is the last case study, is Caltech 711 service station machines. The objective was achieving drainage for new coffee machines in service stations nationwide. The pump solution was a semi-speed grey water pump. Semi-speed allows for the installation of a fully automated coffee machine without the need for conventional plumbing or digging up the concrete slab. At Seniflow, we've introduced a new plumbers portal. We've gone away from paper, we're trying to be paperless, so we've got a new plumbers portal. We don't have brochures as such anymore, only very small ones. It's an online link which has many helpful features. You can get it off our website. It has introduction to Seniflow products video, so just a basic introduction, product catalogues, quick guides, pump selection, and what we call the 10 golden rules. So if you want to do an installation, it just shows you 10 basic rules. The Plumbers Portal also has additional features, including install videos and troubleshooting videos. It has case studies and online request service forms. So on the left-hand side there, I don't know if you would get involved in service request forms, but you can online book a service call, etc., under warranty. We have new products, including the Sanifast grey water pump. This can pump 10 metres vertically. So we're always bringing new products in because we're a large French-based company where we often buy new companies. So this one's very good if you've got a high lift. It can lift up to 10 metres vertically. So good for heavy commercial applications. This is another exciting product range we've just recently acquired. In-ground pump chambers, which can be used for large residential projects where traditional plumbing is not an option. Lots of times now there's battle act boxes, etc., where traditional plumbing is a no-go, so we can put the pump stations in and pump up to the street. Good for these new projects that are going around. And I heard someone talking about CPD presentations. Well, at Saniflow, we offer CPD presentations, and they're available at your practice or via a webinar, whichever's more convenient for yourselves. To book a lunch and learn or a CPD presentation, you can either contact myself or Ravi up the back. We've left some business cards there, or you can look at our website and it's very easy to contact us. That was fairly quick, but thank you for your time.
Thanks, Neil. Just before you go,
Thanks very much, Neil.
before you go,
Yeah.
any questions?
Yeah.
I've got a question. I actually think these are a great idea. We've had one in our office for the last 5 years, operating quite merrily and happily by itself without any maintenance issues. I appreciate that it's sold around the world and there are many varying plumbing standards to deal with, but what's your advice to us Australian designers when it comes to having to deal with the vent from this pot? You know, ideally, we'd like to just put an AAV on it, but I don't think that really sits with AS 3500. Has that been explored with you?
Do you want to answer this? Want to speak, Ravi, or just quickly? Just so you can meet Ravi, that's all. Yeah. But just specifically to AAVs, no, there's specially designed carbon filters that you can get from your Reese stores.
Okay, so and I agree that that's probably all it needs, particularly for a grey water pump, which is just taking sink waste, because it needs two-way breathing. So are you saying to us that that is complying with the performance requirements of AS 3500? And I'm not trying to dig a hole for you, but be very careful, because we have to sign these things off and we want to use your product. So we need to understand what our limitations are. Yeah. Yeah, well, that'd be great.
Yeah, and we're also looking at performance-based solutions at the moment. We're literally going through that process at the moment. So we need some case studies where there's large pump things, and once that's been approved, but typically you should always try and vent to atmosphere. That's your first point of call, vent to atmosphere. But please look, if anyone here, I won't hold you up anymore because the dinner looks lovely and you're making me hungry. So if you've got any questions, call us, because one phone call, we're good at it. We can help you with solutions. Even if you're thinking of using our pumps, our cards are over there. There's myself or Ravi. It doesn't matter who you call or what area you're in. And we've got some pretty cool stuff coming up. So one phone call could possibly, we can help you and save you a lot of time.
Thanks.
Thanks for your time.
Oh, yes.
We actually have a CPD event coming up with these guys at the beginning of April.
Yep.
So that April 6th, there'll be an email goes out to all members just before that.
April 6th, CPD. Yep. All right.
So webinar and
You're doing a webinar on April 6th. Good. So just a very quick point for everyone's benefit. We are making an approach, or we have made an approach to Sydney Water with the view to combine trade waste chamber vents. So the current code requires us to extend a chamber vent all the way to the roof. And when we have a retrofit, with the new grease arrestor, we're required to extend that to the roof. So we're putting a proposal together that is not necessary. It's a load of rubbish, quite frankly. I mean, who's going to send a vent 50 metres, 50 stories up a 50-storey building just for another grease arrestor? So our approach to Sydney Water has been on the basis of engineered calculations to actually prove that another 5,000 litre grease arrestor can connect into an existing chamber vent that exists throughout the building. So in most cases, you only need to extend the vent horizontally before it connects to the nearest chamber vent that's been there for the last 10 years. So this approach is being made to Sydney Water now. This is going to benefit all of us as hydraulic engineers so that we can actually add additional grease arresters into our designs without extending it whatever it has to go. So the same philosophy should be and can be adopted for Ravi's Saniflow system, whereby we need a 50 mil vent, and why wouldn't it be able to connect to an existing stack relief vent? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just trade waste.
Trade waste.
From multiple.
So there's two issues: grease arresters, multiple grease arresters through one vent, and multiple sewer ejector pots or pits through one vent, right? Because it's an engineering logic that's been based on this and all about airflow and volume of water in, volume of air going out. So we've engineered that. So we're looking to make a submission in the next week or so, and we're hoping to get that approved.
Yeah. And look, that may have been born out of trying to fit that into an existing building, but there's no reason why you couldn't do it on a new build as well, if the data supports it, right? So again, it's still going to save you some dollars in plumbing and extending that vent all the way in the roof. Okay, look, we're going to have a little break, 5 or 10 minutes. So just chat amongst yourselves, and then we'll come back for the rehab talk on Bikeway. All right, everybody. If you could all find your seats again, and we'll get on with the rest of the next presentation in the evening. Hello, guys. If you guys and girls, grab a seat. Yep. Okay, come on, please, everybody. Have to do the school teacher thing. So everyone get everybody's attention. All right, so next up on our evening is Nick from Rehow. He's going to talk to us about pipework, plastic pipework, and in particular fire applications. So with no further ado, I'll pass over to Nick.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. I thought I'd first start that I'm no expert in fire sprinkler systems. However, over the past 12, 18 months since May 2019, things had to change. So I have learned a fair bit, understanding standards, understanding what fittings are required, understanding our own systems as well. So yeah, please, if you've got questions, I'll answer to a certain level. Our technical director and our product application engineers both away tonight. I was hoping they'd be by my side, but look, I can answer a certain amount. So yeah, feel free to ask some questions. I've got Nick Hill, you can put your hand up. Nick Hill is new to Rehow as one of our application engineers. And I've got Shannon Cameron. Shannon, can put your hand up. Shannon's one of our sales representatives looking after New South Wales region as well. So, and for those guys who don't know me, I'm the National Sales Manager for Rehow, Australia. So the new standard, the FPAA 101D. So the D is where we come into it. You know, these whole acronyms and everything, Reho's got 1,000 of them. So understanding all new standards and understanding the FPAA 101D and H and 218 and all these standards is something new to me. However, I'm getting through it all. So just to give a quick overview, actually just go back a step. I presented this in South Australia, the HCAA in South Australia. Nick Snowden's in contact with Derek Harris in South Australia, and he just suggested to see if I can come to New South Wales, especially being joined at the hip with the HCAA alignment. It's really good to understand that we can actually spread across all barriers, and even I'll be presenting this in Canberra next month as well. So prior to May 2019, actually, can I use a microphone and stand out here? Testing. So yeah, prior to May 2019, their detached houses didn't need, there was no requirement for PEX, no requirement for sprinkler systems. In multi-residential, there was also no, should put my click with me, no requirements of any projects less than 25 metres effective in height to have fire sprinklers installed. However, our high rise obviously coming under the standard of the 118 suite instead of dictating all the numbers, I just put the suite there. There are requirements and PEX is not permitted on those applications. So if we look at how it all started, this is the background. For those who don't know, there was a fire based in September 2012 in the building pictured, and on the 5th floor, there was a fatality that occurred on apartment 53 on the 5th floor. And the key findings that person the fatality would not have died if there were sprinklers fitted. So we're going to double up. So if we look at the change now, so if we look at May 2019 onwards, if we look at the middle section now, multi-residential up to 25 metres in height, sprinklers are required now by the NCC, and the applicable standard has been modified now from the 218 suite into the FPAA 101D. And last but least is, yes, PEX is now permitted, hence where Rehow come into it. So just a little bit of history back on that is I was approached by a hydraulic consultant in South Australia he gave me a call and he said, Nick, I've got a building I'm designing. I need your system for fire sprinkler. And this was on the 20th of April, 2019. I said, what do you mean? And he started explaining. I said, I still know nothing. I've gone to a technical director, knew nothing. I've gone to the HCAA back then, gone to no one knew anything about it. Then we started doing some research and we found out there actually is a new standard that's out. So not understanding anything and then being put in the middle of it, that guys actually want to install our system was a bit of a shock to us. So the building types, so generally it's above 4, so any buildings class 2 or 3 above 4 floors or less than 25 metres in effective height is where this system comes into play. And if it's a 6-storey building, it doesn't mean the sprinklers are only installed on the 4, 5 and 6 levels. It's actually from the ground floor up. Okay, so the system is through the entire building. I had one consultant, another one in South Australia actually, who said, and he designed it only for level 4, 5 and 6. And then he contacted me and wanted some advice. And I sort of said, it's from the ground floor up. We got that advice through Shay at the FPAA, and he gave us that information and verified it as well. So there is, I'm not sure if everyone knows this, and there's a bit more of information session for you guys, but Fair Trade in New South Wales have actually put out a plumbing advisory note, and it's got some guidelines along who actually does the installation of the pipe work, because you know it's a bit of a battle between the plumber and the sprinkler fitter at the moment. So the sprinkler fitter thinks that the plumber's coming into their domain and starting to install in their systems. And the plumbers like new opportunity. I might take that next step and actually try and get some more, cash flow out of that project. So the thing is, there had to be some guidelines. So if you do go on New South Wales Fair Trading, this is available. For you guys who don't have access to it, I'll send it through to Rod and we can put it on the website. And it just gives a good outline. It's color coded as well. So I think it's blue for plumbers and green for sprinkler fitters. So unless you're a registered sprinkler fitter, you can't fit the sprinkler head. There's some plumbers that are aligning themselves now with various sprinkler fitters, so then they can actually quote a job and complete a job together, because the sprinkler fitters don't want to install the pipe work. They just want to, do the rest of the infrastructure instead. So the key points of this is the FPAA 101D requires a hydraulic design to obviously the standards. And we achieve that using generally Hyena or something similar. But from our research, speaking to various fire engineers and hydraulic engineers, Hyena seems to be used about 80 to 85% of the time. Is there any brand or any other software that besides Hyena? Hyena's got the market, yeah. So that's what we understand. So, and then basically with Hyena, all that product information is required based on bore sizes and pipe sizing, and all those charts come out of the Row Titan, the Row Titan technical information, the TI. And so with that, we can provide that data to you guys. That's actually open data anyway. It's on myrehow.com, so you'll be able to find that information there as well. So just to because I'm just not sure the audience about what you do know of the standard. So I'll just explain that there's been 2 parts of it. There's the FPAA 101D and the FPAA 101H. So the D standing for drinking water. So as you can see, the SOU, the sole occupancy unit toilets and the water meters that have been circled. So the end of the line at the residential system, I wish I had my pointer here, but I can't really use this either. I'm going to use this pointer to show the fitting now too. So basically the sole occupancy unit, the toilet, is coming off the residential system. So these will go to the apartments for the toilets, hand baits and shower, etc. And then there's a separate line which will be a feeder into every sole occupancy unit. At the end of the line, they are putting the water to the toilet as a alarm bell, I suppose, and to keep flushing the system. So if you look at this system here as well, it's all coming off of the town's mains. It would obviously have to be hydraulically designed to ensure there's no the right pressures are coming out of every fixture for both the showers, toilets, and also the sprinkler system. And if I click through, Then with the H system, the hydro system, this is your general system you're seeing on projects at the moment that are over 25 metres in height. And what the difference you see is you've got all this infrastructure here, okay? And then you've got this system here without the sprinklers. So on a project, you've got that plus that when you're doing a H system, whereas when you're doing a D system, this infrastructure is already there because it's part of your drinking water. Oh, sorry, under 25 metres. Thank you. I'm glad I got my eyes up. And then the other part of the D system is the dry. So there is the dry system from the hydrant booster. So it still has the infrastructure, however, doesn't have, you know, if I go through every single valve, you know, from your water meters, your stop valves, your pump sets, your alarms, hasn't got all that infrastructure. So it's still got that going up in your stairwells, however, not within the units themselves. So they are two different, completely different systems. Some key benefits of the D system that we've sort of found and researched, and you know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, it extends from the drinking water supply. So it is always monitored. If the toilet's not flushing, you're going to call the plumber. They're going to go then understand there's actually something wrong with the system. That's one way to understand that. Less infrastructure than the typical standard installation. Minimal routine service requirements. So there's no additional monitoring or alarm. So, and this is where some of the fire engineers have got, there's a lot of caution behind that because they're used to monitoring, they're used to alarms, you know, but however, this is one way they can reduce the cost because the standard, from what we understand as well, is it was put in place not to save the building, but to save lives. Okay, that's the biggest terminology that we keep getting told on that behalf. So that's why reducing that big infrastructure and alarms and monitoring, they can reduce costs as well. So you're still putting a fire system in, however, it's not a full system. Special manufacturing fittings by RIA to suit the system. So, you know, if there are requirements around, you know, I'll go through this fitting in a minute, but, you know, RIA are the company who will actually manufacture new fittings to suit the sprinkler applications. The use of the toilets creates the automatic testing system by the toilet flushing, which I've already gone through. And it's a better system reliability. You've got a watermarked system that's been in operation, you know, with RIA PEXO pipes for over 40 years. So you've got a trusted watermark system available. A bit of a change clause as well is, you know, the use of Appendix C of the standard for PEX pipe and fittings. So flexible tube assemblies shall not be used. So normally you see your galvanized system, you've got a T-piece and you've got your flexible hose. Traditionally the galvanized pipe and those flexi hoses aren't watermarked as well. That may change in the future, but at this stage it is only having the PEXO pipe as an ability, and that's why instead of a flex hose section, we'll actually utilize this with like hanging rod sticking up, and then there's an adjustment screw here that is within the escutcheon plate, which I'll go through as well for your last adjustments. So look, I'm just making this as basic as possible. So you know, the ceiling sprinkler types are your pendants and your concealed sprinklers. So you got your mounting plate, your escutcheon plate, and your cover plates. So this is the fitting that we've just finalised. So the rehal barb, it's a 25mm rehal barb. So the smallest pipe size we're going to be using in this application is 25mm. Although traditionally rehal, you know, is known a lot for their 16 and 20, which is for your apartments and your housing, etc. So in this application, it's 25mm and above. It's got a 1/2 inch thread for your sprinklers. It's got an integrated bracket, which can be connected directly to the slab or via an M10 rod. And it's got the height adjustment screw. And like I said, that's within the escutcheon plate. I'll sort of show you. This is basically how it works in operation. So just a Phillips head, you know, to go up and down, okay? So if I go into a little bit more detail, so this fitting, we've already completed one project in New South Wales, and that seating space was 70mm in depth. We didn't have this fitting at that stage, but if we did, it would have been a lot easier to actually finalise and get this adjustment on that project, because it was a student accommodation project and they had minimal seating space. So if you sort of see the fairing channel, so the fairing channels are 30 millimeters in height as well. And you can sort of see that's at full closure. And then if we open that fitting up, then we can get the whole way that 30 millimeters down, which gives you that ability for that setting adjustment if there was any play available in there as well. And then you're within the ceiling space. So the clip for clipping, so clipping according to the standards, and Rio's got our recommendations in our technical information as well. Extra clips close to sprinklers are available if required, because you can clip onto our pipe work. But in general, we must be installed. So during removal and replacement of sprinkler heads, there's no rotation of that pipe and fittings. So by having the clip, the clips, the M10 section, the bracket section, the pipe on opposite ends, the pipe is very stiff. So I can get you guys to come up and have a play with these fittings after, and you can sort of feel the resistance you've got, that it is going to be a really good fixed joint for that as well. And then when you've got a longer installation, that's where you utilize your M10 rod. And the next bracket, we want to ensure there is a certain distance away. So minimum 500 millimeters, which is sitting about here. That gives the ability that if that's actually fixed to the slab, you've got the flexibility to go up and down. If that next clip is sitting here, you're not going to be able to screw this up and down. Okay, so the next one over is at 500 millimeters. All the packaging of these fittings. So these fittings will come in a bag. Okay, that bag will have the following details on there. So it's all the manufacturing, obviously, detail. But one really important part, and I think we've learned this through COVID as well, is we've got a Q code on there. So you can actually take a photo of that Q code now, and that'll take you through Safari and actually take you to all our Rehau information to do with fire sprinkler. So all our technical notes, our product information, our guidelines, that Scan Me page, that Scan Me will actually take you straight to it. If you want that after, please come up and see me. We can do it on the computer as well. Technical advice. So look, with Rehau, we've got our technical information, our TI. However, things outside those guidelines that come up, like fire sprinkler, we developed our TI, and then all of a sudden fire sprinkler popped up. We would do a separate technical note, which is a legal document that sort of outlines some extra guidelines as well. So with that came, commissioning. So making sure you're bleeding all your sprinklers, when you're doing your pressure test. Pipe marking. So pipe marking is not mandatory in this area. However, Rehau do recommend this procedure of utilising stickers, purely because it is the same pipe as a drinking water system. We've got green for rainwater, we've got lilac recycle, we've got red for hot, and we've got platinum for our hot and cold. And we just like to ensure that if you are installing a fire system as well, this is included as part of that. This came from Rod, is with our fire test reports. So when a Rehau pipe is penetrating through a fire rated wall, we always recommend, we don't give out any test reports. We do recommend you go directly to the manufacturer of the fire collars, because they will always have an updated test report. So in this case here, ProMat have got a lot of test reports to do with our PEX pipes. So if you do require data, you can come to me if you don't have contact with your local ProMat sales rep. Come to us and we can put you in the right direction for that as well. When will New South Wales projects make the change to reflect the new standard? That's a question I do ask, and hopefully after tonight I can get a few questions come our way and get an understanding about who is going to start adopting this change. So the Rehau Titan systems, so for the people who don't know Rehau as a product, because Rehau's been a trusted product in the market for many, many years. I've got the statement there, it's the most trusted PEX system in Australia, and it's now available for fire sprinkler work. So, and the fire sprinkler fitters was spoken to, they're used to hard, rigid, galv, strong pipes. Rehau, you can drive your forklift over this pipe work. It's a compression sleeve joint. So there's a lot of pluses to having the Rehau joint. And what the system is, it's sleeves. We've got brass and polymer fittings. However, the polymer fittings don't get used in sizes 25 and above, so they are actually all brass fittings. Our pipe, we've manufactured, I think, something crazy, like you can go to the moon and back 8 times the amount of PEX pipe that we've manufactured since Rehau started. Tooling, so all our tooling and our service is through Reese. Reese are our exclusive distributor as well. Geez, Reese are getting some good plugs tonight, Lewis. So look, Reese are exclusive distributor. So for any tooling or any stock, Reese have got over 500 stores that have got Rehau in stock. So in New South Wales as well. So that's our TI. So that's downloadable on myrehau.com, which I'll get to soon. This is the first job actually we completed in New South Wales. So this installation, the plumbing contractor came to us and wanted to do an installation. And it was a difficult thing because we weren't prepared. However, we got him to a situation that he could actually install the full system. So, it had to be pipe sized correctly. There was no hydraulic design. It wasn't done on hyena. So we assisted, our technical team assisted the contractor to get that project done. This is a project we're already starting in Adelaide in the next 4 to 6 weeks as well. It's a 5 and a 4-story building right next to each other under the same envelope. So the network of pipes that we're playing with, it's what Rehau does. So it's nothing new to us running pipe work. The last slide I'll put on here is myrehau.com. This is a really important part for Rehau, is that we train, or we like to train. We love when people take us up on the offer. Is training the contractors on our systems. Okay, so they can go through, if you see it up the top, rewards, training, design. They click on training and they can go, there's water, gas, drainage, fire, and civil. They go into the fire section, they go through our procedures of our installation and testing, and they get generated a certificate. We get that certificate number. So if you're on a project and you're looking to specify Rehau, you can ring us up and say, have these guys been trained? We can look up and we say, yes, they have, or no, they haven't. And they'll advise us to then do that training for them. So, which is a very good platform to have. That's it, Rod. How'd I do? I haven't got my watch on. So I tried to keep it, there's probably been another 30 slides I did take out with a lot more detail. So, yeah, look, I've got some cards up here. And for the guys who are here from the FPAA and the guys from Fire New South Wales, please come up and see me after. I'd like to have a chat to you as well to get some questions and answers that I do as well. But is there any questions?
Look, before we jump into that, I might also just put that to the people that are online watching. If you do have any questions, please email those through, and I'll have a look on the chat to pose those to the group. But yeah, look, let's open it up to the room. It's pretty common that fire breeds a lot of discussion in this forum. So, hang on. You wait for that one, Nick. I'll run this one up.
So I think, is there any recommendation regarding the backflow prevention, especially the stagnant water in the fire sprinklers in the domestic water system?
Yeah, so that's probably the biggest contentious chat about this at the moment. Is it only requires a standard backflow prevention device. It's not a monitored, it's not an RPZ valve, and that's where some states are still fence sitting to see if it's going to change in time. Because we're talking about a system of fire and we're talking about a system of residential sprinkler, a residential hot and cold water. How are they mixing? How are you holding that away? So look, I feel that may change in time. However, at the moment, it's just a standard backflow prevention device.
Anybody else?
Cook's Plumbing Supplies and Co-op bringing their own PEX. Is that also acceptable in the standard?
It's PEX pipes.
PEX pipe in general, okay.
It's PEX like flex pipes. So it's not multi-layer pipe. And like I said, its pipe size is 25 mil and above. And generally those sort of suppliers don't hold those sort of stock. I'm not sure what the future holds. However, Rehau's got experience in those pipe size for many, many years.
Okay, thank you.
confusion, but unnecessary confusion regarding the demarcation between sprinkler and plumbing trade. And it seems to me that it's only come about because there's this connection to the WC. You might not have the answer to this question, but it's just a general question. So for many, many years, we've had sprinkler systems that are stagnant. And now we're introducing an opportunity to ensure that there's flow through that pipework by virtue of the WC. If that WC wasn't part of this new standard, then the demarcation would stop at the backflow prevention valve and there wouldn't be an issue, right? Plumber plumbs the valve, sprinkler guy takes it off, away we go, happy days, right? So I'm not privy to all the discussions with the FPAA, and I'm sure they've got their reasons, but maybe I'll put it to Bill. Do you know why we've got a WC at the end of these lines, Bill, to make our life difficult?
I'll go with that.
So I'm just going to run over the Home Building Act for a moment. So the Home Building Act is the act in New South Wales that determines who can do what. So under the Home Building Act, we have plumbers sitting at the top of the tree. So a plumber can do anything in New South Wales. This is the only state. So the ACT, Queensland, Victoria, not so much the Western states, but they draw a distinction between a Part 5 system and the other systems. So anything that's connected to the potable network has to be done by a plumber. That's the way the rules read here. So there is within the Cert 3, so we rolled out about 10 years ago, and we started at North Sydney TAFE, an elective unit in the plumbing trade to give plumbers the skill to do the work. So Dave, if plumbers pick up that unit, at the moment there's no regulatory reason why plumbers can't do the whole thing. So plumbers can put in a Part 1 system or a Part 6 system in New South Wales. It's merely the self-enforced demarcation by the union. So both groups belong to the PTEU. It just so happens that on a building site, sprinkler fitters will do sprinkler work and plumbers will do plumbers work. So there is no reason why a plumber can't do the entire work. The reason that there is a bit of a joining of plumbing companies and fire companies is that plumbing companies generally don't have an in-house design organisation or setup, whereas most fire companies do. And so what they're using is they're hooking up the hydraulic design that comes from being hooked up with a fire company. So I'm not sure that answered your question. I hope it did.
And they're also afraid, a lot of these plumbers are afraid to touch this at this stage as well. It's a bit early in the piece, and that's what we're sort of finding speaking to plumbers and sprinkler fitters. They're sort of finding that they don't want to dip the toes in the water. They want to align themselves with a sprinkler fitter, get comfortable, because a lot of these toilets as well, for the sprinkler fitter to run that pipe work, they're never going to get that spot on to where they need for all these toilets.
They can't run the pipe work. So sprinkler fitters, their license doesn't cover. Yeah. They have a restricted plumber's license in New South Wales. They have a water plumber's license. If they do this, if they do their Cert 3 in fire protection, they can do everything beyond the backflow prevention device, the point of potability. But if you do your Cert 4, you do your Cert 3 and your Cert 4 in fire, and you pick up a Cert 4 in plumbing, you can do the mains connection. Yep. So plumbers, sprinkler fitters cannot do the work because their license doesn't cover that work in New South Wales.
Yeah, and that's the alignment they're getting together.
Correct. Yeah. So the concept for the 101D was to minimise costs. So what you've got to understand, the 101D was developed at the direction of the New South Wales coroner to develop a fit-for-purpose fire sprinkler system. So to do that, what we had to do was go back to basics. How do we minimise costs on this system? We minimise costs by having the one unit of labour on site the whole time. So that was. I don't know whether that answers your question, Rod, but the point of potability, the plumber's doing everything that's on a D system. So we've only got one unit of labour on that site. We don't have any demarcation. So
this plumbing advisory note is actually 3 pages. So that I've just done a screenshot of the first page. So to put everything on there, you wouldn't have been able to read anything, but that's only 1 page. Like I said, we can share that through the HCAA, or it's on the Fair Trading website as well.
Yep.
And that gives that guidelines that you're describing as well.
Yep. But you specialise in that, Dave. You've been like that for a decade. Why was it put in there? Dead leg, to make sure we didn't have a dead leg. Well, there's a requirement in 101D to minimise dead legs, and that was agreed by the water supply authorities to have those minimised dead legs. So when you're designing a system, when you're doing your layout, you've got to minimise it. And I forgot what the number is, but there's a number in 101D to minimise that. And so the water supply authority said, if you keep it to that's fine. If you have a dead leg less than that, then we're good to go. And one of the other advantages that we've been putting Part 5 systems into group housing for a decade. And we've had several fires in there, and the Part 5 systems have worked extremely effectively to minimise those fires. So what we found where those fires have occurred is there's been virtually no property damage. So most of you would know that in a conventional Part 1, Part 6, Part 4 system, we're using black pipe. And when one of those goes off, we end up with, significant water damage, but the water damage is a result of that sprinkler water causing literally hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damage. And our members have, not our members, but some sprinkler fitters over the years have caused extensive damage. And a lot of that damage is because of the water that's in there. But under this system now, we have virtually no water damage. We can reoccupy, once we've mopped up the water, and this has happened with a lot of, where we've actually had fires in those group homes, we've mopped up the water and people can occupy within 48 hours rather than having to refit the whole place. Somebody who's got a plumber's license, if you're an unrestricted plumber, if you had a water plumber's license, you're good to go. Install the whole D. What I would suggest, and what we're working on, is to try and reinvigorate those elective units that were part of the Cert 3 that told people how to do some simple calculations and what a head layout looked like. So we put that together, crikey, it'd be 15 years ago, probably at when those units were first released. When Part 5 was first written, was when we did that. So one of the things that Fire Brigade were looking at is, and Mark Porter or my mate, my other mates from the Fire Brigade might want to talk about it, was, may want to talk about it. Mark's in a union, he probably won't want to talk about it. So if you think about the role of the Fire Brigade, here's a fire, here's a bloke with some water. If you have a fire sprinkler system, you don't actually need a Fire Brigade. So we could have a brand new development where we could perhaps have a reduced weight of attack, or maybe we don't even need the Fire Brigade. So it's possible that in some new developments in the future, we could have Class 1 and 1As with Part 5 systems in them and remove the need for, don't mention that to who's a union secretary this day. Don't tell him I said that, Mark. Pardon?
Rod. Yeah, what's it? One more up the back. Darren.
The other reason they're connected to the toilets is to actually ensure that the system is working. If the toilet's not working, well, someone will tell you straight away. And by the way, you've got to connect both. If there's 2 toilets or 5, every single one's got to be connected to the system. So they're straight away, they know it. Bear in mind, there's no valves on this. They're not going to call the brigade or anything. So the only way we can be having an idea the system is working is that it's people are using the toilets. The one thing we assumed in a building people are going to use all the time.
Yeah, and that's what's outlined in here as well. You can sort of see I'll probably just see the orange dots in the toilet. So every toilet is part of the system.
The question might have been answered, but under the city water catchment areas, each unit must have a water meter. How is the toilet water metered, first of all? Second of all, under basics for units, generally, not always, rainwater is to go to toilets. How does that affect this design when you're trying to battle 3 different authorities, city water, basics, and the fire, FFPA?
Yeah, probably not a question for the pipe manufacturer. Probably more of a question for the FPAA. Sorry for that, Hamble, but I reckon that's probably could be outlined.
Well, look, I haven't had to design one yet, but I would think if you're complying with basics, there'd have to be some sort of exemption. They're not going to interconnect the two, and you might have to change a basics report to reflect that. Water meters, look, I don't think it shows it on that diagram, but certainly in Sydney Water, you would have a residential, in accordance with the MLIM scheme, you would have a resi stratum meter, upstream of every one of those. I don't know. If Nick,
Free
can you go
toilets.
back to your
Free toilet water.
diagram. You've got your individual unit meters.
It is, it's free toilet water.
It'll get captured by the stratum meter and get paid by the body corporate.
Yeah.
And that'll be apportioned based on your floor area and your entitlement on that stratum.
Yeah, the job in South Australia, they mentioned that the strata takes care of that part of it and it's part of their divvy out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rod.
Couple more. We might have to wrap this up soon.
Please.
Not my field of expertise, but I just thought if you've got places like Kellyville where they've got recycled water systems where they utilise that in toilets, would that be something they wouldn't utilise in an apartment building? And if they did, what would you do in that situation where they're putting recycled water to toilets? Would it be, it wouldn't be suitable for that, would it?
Look, speaking out of my experience, I wouldn't do recycled water in this instance, just purely based on it's still connected to, it's only got one certain backflow device. There's a lot of risk, I would say, in a recycled water system for here. If it was rainwater, it'd be a little bit different, but I'm not sure. Once again, it's probably not outlined in the guidelines of any of the FPAA 101D or H. I don't think it's in the guidelines at all. Good question. So it's something that we could probably have a chat about after.
Maybe something we might follow up a bit later.
Good
think
question.
That could go on for a little while, but
Yeah.
I tend to agree. I think anything where, you know, occupants or firefighters are coming into contact with it, water, you wouldn't be going for it. So you might have to look at some other alternative and you might end up with a H system instead of D system. So.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
My cards are here if anyone wants any details and some fittings. Thanks.
All right. Well, look, we will have another little break. I don't know how we went for time there. We were pretty well on time. We're probably slightly over with all those questions, but have a little break. We'll come back with the Fire and Rescue New South Wales. Thanks. Oh. I've lost my cursor. Don't know what this, I want to clear that box or minimize it. Oh, there we go. Okay, so if we to minimize that. Okay, all right, now, beautiful. Not sure what you did, but it's back. So I'm just going to get through all that. Yeah, thanks for that. Okay, everybody, if you can all take your seats again, we might get started on the last section of the presentations. All right, come on, guys. Please take your seats. Look, I don't really want to rush you. I know that little bit between the sessions is always a good time to catch up with everybody and have a chat. Nick specifically said that to me tonight. Try and make that a little bit longer if you can. And particularly, look, I must admit, we were unaware that the club wasn't open on a Monday and a Tuesday. So the people that did come early and normally go upstairs and have a quick beer, apologies if that sort of messed up with your plans a little. Once we sort of knew that, we just asked the staff to let everybody in and get the drinks going so that we could do that in the back of the room. But we'll switch that around for next time. If that's still the case, that may change with COVID, of course. So we'll keep you posted. But you know, I do want to get started on this because, as I said, fire always generates lots of questions. We're sort of on time at the moment, but I want to get into the Fire and Rescue New South Wales. We got Damon Chamberlain. He's going to, or Chamberlain, sorry if I pronounce that incorrectly, but look, we're going to talk some Storts fittings and some changes that are coming up or have started. So I'll let him go with that, and then we'll do some questions afterwards. And just chatting with Bill, he'd like to maybe have a quick few words after this is finished, just on some of the codes and standards and policies that him and Nick are sitting on, and maybe give a quick rundown on that. So thank you. Yeah, so you can just scroll through with the arrows. Should be good.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Storts, a new era, AS 2419, Part 4, Storts fitting for firefighting purposes. How many people here are aware that there's a new standard? Great. Okay, so in New South Wales, fire brigade hose connections. If you look at the current requirement for Australian standards, 2419 Part 1, 2005, in Appendix E1 and E2, it makes reference to both fire brigade thread and Storts hermaphrodite. And that's it, just Storts hermaphrodite. If you look at Appendix B in Part 2, which is fire hydrant valves, it doesn't actually identify which couplings are actually used in New South Wales. It's a bit of an anomaly, but it's actually missing the second part of the table. And then if you look at Part 3, which is fire brigade boosters, it identifies NEN 3374 Storts are to be used on fire brigade boosters. So you've got 3 different standards, all saying 3 different things. Nothing new. So the next version of 2419, Part 1, and I'm pretty sure you have heard of this, is likely to make reference to 2419, Part 4, which is just recently accepted in the ballot, and it's been approved. So why develop a new Australian standard for Storts? So it's about standardising that Storts fitting. So as I said before, Part 1 just talks about Storts, but it doesn't actually say what Storts it has to be. 2419 Part 1, 2005, it didn't define the Storts standard, and as such, the quality of Storts we've seen has varied considerably. Although prohibited in Part 1, cast aluminium Storts fittings were being counted. Now, NEN 3374, which you probably heard, is a 1971 standard from the Netherlands, and it references obsolete material standards. So while there was a standard being referenced, it was out of date. And Storts fittings with fibre gauge thread are not compliant with NEN 3374. So quite often you'll see a fibre gauge booster or fire hydrant valve and it'll actually have a Storts fitting on it. But if it's got fibre gauge thread, then it is not technically a NEN 3374 compliant Storts. Storts fittings for fibre gauge for firefighting purposes should be manufactured to ISO, EN and DIN standards. So the original intent of the NEN standard was to comply with European standards, but as I said, they were made obsolete, and because the standard hadn't been updated, the references have been lost. Okay, so problem with non-standard Storts fittings. So you'll see here on an example, when you actually break the locking lug off, you can actually tell the difference between cast aluminium and forged aluminium. When you try and break off the locking lug of the cast aluminium Storts, it's very easy to snap off. It's so brittle, it has no strength in it whatsoever compared to forged. Fire Rescue New South Wales have undertaken some testing of forged. We basically used a crowbar. You couldn't snap off the lug of a forged Storts adapter. And as you can see on the right-hand side, there's been failures on fire hydrant valves. You'll find that here I'm showing a fibre gauge thread Storts adapter versus a proper NEN 3374 Storts, which has British standard piping thread. So British standard piping thread is an ISO thread, and that's what it should be. When you don't have a standardised Storts fitting, you'll find dimensions are slightly out, which will affect the flow of the Storts fitting. And you'll also see that things like the shape and size of the sealing rings will differ as well. This one's actually a big one for Fire Rescue New South Wales because we actually have spare sealing rings in our adapter kits on our trucks. So if we encounter a fire hydrant valve without a sealing ring, we need to be able to put ours in and get to work. But if it's a non-standard Storts fitting, we can't do that. Okay, so contents of the new Australian Standard AS2419 Part 4. You're probably asking why Part 4? This was actually developed as part of the 2419 suite because obviously these are going on the fire hydrant valves and boosters. So it just made sense that it's just the next part of that series. So just in a snapshot, I don't actually have the standard here yet. It's being published imminently. So within the next week or two, it should be released by Australian standards. But here is the structure and content of the standard. It varies considerably from 3374. We've actually defined the assemblies. There's a whole bunch of, so this actually includes all the firefighting equipment, not just what's on the boosters and the fire hydrant valves, but it also includes adapters, blanking caps, all that sort of thing. There's a new one there, 2.4, which is fire hydrant adapter and anti-tamper plug. That's a new piece of kit that we're introducing, which is straight from the German standards. We're defining the manufacture process now. So sizes, dimensions, materials, tolerances, and markings. So we're trying to get some consistency on all of them. And we're also bringing along some performance requirements so that we can actually get some consistency in the performance. Performance is actually where we'll be measuring the variation between them. So 5.2 interconnection torque. This is a big one for Fire Rescue New South Wales. When we turn up to a Storts and we put our hose on, we generally expect our firefighters to do it by hand. Therefore, the torque has to be a certain range. If it's above that, you need hose spanners, which just takes time and we prefer not to see that. Appendix A, B and C, you'll see in Appendix A, we're asking for product conformity. So one of the big things with Storts to NEN 3374 is trying to get some sort of conformity documentation on that. we've seen various bits and pieces. Usually it's just a letter from the supplier saying, yes, we meet NEN 3374, but there's no verification or validation of the actual conformance testing. And that changes with part 4. So this is the new anti-tamper plug. It's just basically in there for consideration at the moment. Where we see this being applied is in situations where you normally require a anti-tamper locking device. The anti-tamper locking device requires a key. Our firefighters don't necessarily have the keys. It's just more problematic. So if you need something with anti-tamper, what this plug will do will actually just using a triangle boss spanner, which we'll have in our kits, we can just remove them. Potentially, this might be something that we might want to see on dry fire hydrants. Because, yeah, anti-tamper is something that's necessary in dry fire hydrants for obvious reasons. The second part was dimensions and tolerances. They're now being as defined by DIN and EN standards. So pretty much any Storz that's manufactured in Germany will be designed to DIN standards. So we don't really have a problem with the likes of Feuervogel, Lipol Shot, AWG, that sort of thing. We're pretty confident they'll be matching the dimensions and tolerances. But some of the Storz we see from other places of manufacture, we're more concerned about. Material properties are now defined. It's quite technical. I'm not going to go through all of these, but generally, we know some other fire jurisdictions are actually sending Storz away for independent materiality tests, and they're actually producing lists of compliant and non-compliant Storz. We haven't done that in New South Wales yet, but we may particularly do that in the future. So you can see there's EN standards for the material, EN standards for the forging process, and EN standard for the temper designation. If you meet all those European standards, we know that Storz is going to perform as we require for firefighting. Same with copper alloy. We've got copper alloy to EN standards now, and stainless steel as well. Now the nitrile rubber, which is for the sealing ring, this is one we do see variation in because the nitrile rubber sealing ring is actually what blows out when you reach certain pressures. So that's required to have a HCAA hardness of 60 plus or minus 5 as per ISO 484. Okay, new markings are applied. Now, when you see the standard, it will actually make reference in the Appendix C to all the current existing EN standards and DIN standards. Now, if it's compliant with any of those, then it complies with this standard. So we didn't go with the intention of developing a new standard. We just wanted to mimic what our current products were on all our equipment. So if it does meet those standards, all you're required to do is in that little bit, you just put AS 2419 Part 4 X on the side of the cam ring circumference. Potentially, they may manufacture a whole batch of new Storz and they might get some new casting dies made up, in which case you might actually have AS 2419 Part 4 on the actual top where you normally see NEN 3374. And on the right-hand side, you'll see there's a new high pressure variation. So one of the interesting things is in fire brigade boosters, you have a PM35 booster, but you don't actually have a high pressure rated Storz coupling at the moment. There are stainless steel PM40 Storz, but you can also get aluminium alloy rated to 4,000 kPa. And they need to be marked with HP. Okay, performance parameters. So as I just mentioned, there's 2 working pressures now. So typically forged aluminium Storz is PM16, 1600 kPa, and that will meet a test pressure of 2,400 kPa. But there's now the new variant, which for PM35 boosters, which will be 4,000 kPa working pressures, and they're tested to 6,000. Now, what we've been told from the German manufacturers is essentially the Storz is identical. It's actually that sealing ring that varies. But one of the manufacturers does actually modify slightly the manufacture of the shape of that ring, just so that they know that you can't put a standard sealing ring into a high pressure storage. So we'll probably address that in a variation in the next version of this standard. And there's a table in appendix, or 5.3, which is the interconnection torques. Yeah, it's shown up. So in orange, I can't really see it on my screen. 65 mil, which is what goes on the 500 valves and boosters. So it's 9 to 15 Newton meters of torque. Now, Fire Rescue New South Wales may potentially be purchasing some torque wrenches, and we'll actually measure these when we do our tests on buildings. Okay, this is the big one, requirements for demonstrating product conformity. So appendix 8.3 of part 4 basically says this. The required inspection report demonstrating conformity must include the name of the testing body, the name of the fitting manufacturer, the address of the fitting manufacturer, because sometimes they do change the place of manufacture. Description, including type, diameter, materials, working pressures. This is when they're making more than one product, which most of them do anyway. Detailed photos of the fitting. We have noted that some sports manufacturers will actually change their product. So by having photos, we can actually have a reference to which that inspection report relates to. Chemical composition, ultimate tensile strength and hardness, all defined, and they need to be tested. And results of applicable conformity testing, which will be the next slide. And then finally, just a statement saying they conform or don't conform. Also, the initial order of materials, so the base material, the aluminium, needs to have a statement of conformity, such as an EN 10204 type 31 certificate. Now, as I said, if they're coming out of Europe, we know they have these anyway because it's part of the pressure equipment directive in Europe nations to actually supply this. So it shouldn't be an issue for those suppliers. For the others, we'll have to wait and see. So the testing of product conformity, appendix 8.5 of part 4. The dimensions and finishes must be verified. So we're actually asking for those dimensions to now be checked with, just be checked and verified that they meet those drawings that you saw earlier. They must be pressure tested in accordance with EN 12266, and they shall not leak, when tested for a minimum of 2 minutes. And Stort's fitting with a suction gasket. Now, typically we'll require a suction gasket on all fittings, but on the hoses, we'll only have delivery sealing rings. They shall not intake air when tested at a vacuum of -95. And the interconnection torque shall also be tested to be within the acceptable range. So when torque meters are being used, they shall be challenge tested to make sure they're neutral. The adapters shall be measured against a reference hose coupling. So we'll actually use a hose coupling when testing, because for those that don't know, the actual center bit of a hose coupling actually swivels, whereas what you see on a fire brigade booster or fire hydrant valve is static, and it just mates and it presses. It doesn't actually swivel when you turn the cam ring, it's actually static. And if the ramp or lug performance is being measured separately, which is described by NFPA testing or Canadian CAN testing, then you must use a phase test gauge. And then the torque, which is greater the measurement, is the interconnection torque. So you'll find that 125, 150, etc., are actually done to NFPA standards and not to DIN standards. So what does all this mean for you guys? So I know that's quite technical, over the top. So the way we're viewing it in Fire Rescue New South Wales is compatible versus conforming. So comparing something that was previously NEN 3374 versus the new standard requirement. We're doing this to draw a line in the sand. An NEN 3374 Storts fitting may be compatible with Fire Rescue New South Wales equipment. However, it may not conform to 2419 Part 4, i.e. the dimensions and tolerances, the interconnection torque might be slightly out of whack. Existing compatible NEN 3374 should remain installed on fire safety systems. We're not asking anyone to remove them and replace with new compliant Storts. There's no need to upgrade what's on systems already. Existing NEN 3374 Storts that do conform to Part 4, such as some of those manufacturers I mentioned, can actually just have the additional marking applied. So if you use a seller and they're supplying a certain product and it conforms, all they need to do is photo etch Part 4 on the side of the rim. And AS 2419 Part 4 Storts fittings must have an inspection report by the manufacturer or supplier if it's first party, by the user or purchaser if it's second party, or by an independent body if it's third party. So as long as you get that comprehensive inspection report, that's fine. We may still question it if we believe it's suspect, but we need all those details provided when these Storts are being supplied. It will come to be that we'll generally acknowledge which Storts we're happy with, and if there's any that suspect we come across through our inspections, we'll probably then start issuing some correspondence. So by this being referenced in Part 1 of 2021, hopefully, any that don't comply with Part 4 could be deemed to be a non-compliant building product, and we now have some recourse to go through fair trading and get that product banned from sale. And at the moment, we don't have that mechanism. New fire hydrant systems may soon require AS 2419 Part 4 Storts fittings. So at the earliest, and there's going to be a transition period, at the earliest, if it does get referenced in Part 1 won't get referenced by the building code till 2022. So you won't necessarily need to see any of these until mid next year. But we are going to be communicating with the suppliers and letting them know and start that transition period happening sooner rather than later. For more information resources, I'm currently in the process of updating our current information on the website, but you can go to www.fire.nsw.gov.au/connections. It's a simple link. It will take you to this web page. This web page will actually break it down for various stakeholders, and there'll also be a link to a brochure, and there will be a link to our current existing technical information sheets, providing more detail on some of this. Now, I'm a bit scared about the next slide, but hit me with it.
All right, thanks very much, Damien. That was awesome.
Oh, forgot to mention, if anyone wants to come up and actually look at them in detail, I'm actually quite prepared to go through and actually explain some of the detail that we've covered in that presentation.
Can I maybe start with one? So what's the process then? If you come across a project as a consultant and you go out on site and you suspect that it's not a compliant fitting, you might put that in a defect report. It may or may not get resolved depending on the builder and the plumber. What's the next step? Do we sort of go back to you guys, or is that something that you check when you come out to site after the system's commissioned? How would you pick it up?
Yeah, so one of the issues is FISW aren't really a regulator, so we can't really do anything ourselves. There's questions about who the ultimate responsibility lies upon. Now, some people might believe it might be the principal certifier who's signing up the job. Some people think it might be the accredited practitioner who's installed the system or certified the system. So very soon, I'd imagine, there's going to be a new accreditation level for price system certification. So it may fall on that person. There's a degree of responsibility on the installer to actually buy reputable products. So one of the issues is who is ultimately responsible. At the moment, no one. So one of the documents that's linked on their website or will be linked is actually identifying each stakeholder's role in the process. And I think the intent is to actually have enough checks and balances that at least one person picked it up, but there's no ultimate authority responsible for picking it up. It's everyone's responsibility.
Look, I certainly hope that once this accreditation scheme comes in July, that maybe a few more builders and plumbers will start listening to the people that are responsible for the design. I know a number of times ours falls on deaf ears and may not get picked up sometime, but hopefully that'll change and we end up with better products overall. So look, I'll throw it open to you guys. Has anyone got some questions for Damon? Oh, wow. What? Yep. Yes.
Just a quick question: do you reckon you'll have it out before point one gets finalised? Because
yeah,
if it isn't, it won't. It's not going to fly. So
yeah, part 4 has already been approved. Like I said, it's being published as we speak by Australian standards. My understanding is it'll probably be out this week or next week. It's pretty imminent. The problem is, even though it's coming out in Australian standard, it's not referenced yet. So until it's referenced, it's just a document that has no standing. The first reference it will have will actually be part 1, which hopefully will get approved. And then if it does get approved in part 1, then it only becomes relevant when it's referenced by the National Construction Code. So the earliest 2022, you'll find that fire agencies may make reference to it straight away. Like we're going to look at it in terms of our firefighting equipment. We're going to make reference to it and get our suppliers to comply with it. Yeah.
So, Mark, what do you think about this standard?
Mate, Damon and the bloke who wrote it, they're very, very good. It's very technically correct. So I think industry over time will get dragged into this space of buying us conforming equipment.
Well said, mate. Thank you.
He also works 1.5 metres away from me, so he has to be careful.
Last question.
I guess I'm just intrigued if you guys have heard whether point 1's actually going to make it in NCC or BCA 2022, because really that's already in play at the moment. We're already looking at drafts. We're already looking at things, and it's not in there currently. Have you heard anything that sort of gives us an idea it's going to get there, or any gossip you want to share?
Here, Mark. Yeah, David Wood might be able to respond to that.
Does everyone know David Wood? He's the very silent person who represents us on standards.
Yes, it will.
Yes, it will is the answer. Thank you, David.
You heard it here.
Can I just make a point too that while it will be referenced in part 1 for 2021, you're still going to have those inconsistent references in part 2 and part 3. So the biggest strategy is to actually get rid of those tables, the Appendix B out of part 2, and to get rid of the Appendix B out of part 3. So there's a single point of reference to hose couplings used by fire service in Australia. Now, as I understand it, every fire service, apart from WA, CFA and Northern Territory, have moved across to Storts couplings now. Western Australia and NT are still using BIC, and Queensland. Queensland is still using round thread, and CFA are using 63 TPI, or sorry, 63 mil 3 TPI. I believe CFA may convert soon, I'm hoping. Yeah, so we're actually going to amend our technical information sheet. So at the moment, our technical information sheet talks about a fire brigade thread Stort adapter. We don't like seeing that, only because that's where the consistencies are generally coming through. So we will make reference straight away to part 4 and start seeing changes hopefully come through. The problem for our tech sheet is it doesn't get referenced in any design requirement, only if we make it a recommendation that's adopted by the certifier signing off a CC. That's the only problem for us at the moment. Yep, I agree.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Damon. A round of
Thank you.
applause. And look, I'd like to just thank the other gentleman from Fire Rescue New South Wales for coming along tonight. It's always good to have you here. Now, look, Bill Lee has asked me if he can just say a few quick words at the end of the night. Do you want to come up to the lectern or?
What I want to talk about tonight is 3 regulations which will all impact everyone in this room. But before I talk about those 3 regulations, I want to talk about the background of those regulations. So we now have a New South Wales Building Commissioner, and that Building Commissioner has been authorised, if you like, by Gladys to clean up the building industry. And I was talking to Mark earlier on about some of the significant changes he's making. The Building Commissioner now has the authority to enter any building site in New South Wales and close down any site. He's got a flying squad. What will happen as of now, I don't know how many of you read the certifiers bill. He now has now if you want to submit an OC, you submit a form to him 6 months before you want OC, his team will come out and have a look at your building. So the 2 challenges we have in New South Wales have been identified as part of the Lambert report. Most of you may remember Michael Lambert, who put that report together, was waterproofing and fire. So Michael Lambert has been brought back in by the Building Commissioner, and I sit on all 3 committees and Nick sits on one of them. So we've been given a brief to tidy up the fire industry. But I now want to talk about the 3 regulations that will impact us. So the first is the EP&A regulation. So the EP&A regulation was changed in 2017 to incorporate initially the term competent fire safety practitioner. That changed to accredited practitioner of fire safety. What that did was identified someone at the beginning of the process. So those, I think it's 136AA, endorsing plans and specifications. And right at the end of the process, those are endorsing measures on an annual fire safety statement. What it was missing was the bit in the middle. And I call that bit in the middle the system certifier, which is what we were talking about earlier on. So we've now got Michael Lambert back on board. He's been engaged by Gladys to essentially clean up the Class 2 space. So everything we're working on, it relates to Class 2s, but I can assure you it will flow on. So what we're saying is that we need an accredited person who signs off the system. So relevant systems, that's what's identified in the EP&A regulation. So the relevant systems at the moment are sprinklers, hydrants, hose reels, detection and smoke control. So we have an accreditation scheme in place for everything other than smoke control, but that will be in place probably by the end of the financial year. So what's important in that process is we're now going to close the loop. What's important to also understand is that the individuals who sign off on that, whether you're signing off on the annual fire safety statement at the back end of the process or the front end of the process, endorsing plans and specifications, is you'll wear the same liability as a PCA, so 10 years personal liability. And so we now have an industry that's being held to account for some of the challenges that we all know have occurred over the last 20 years. So that's the EP&A regulation and the changes that are occurring there. So I'm advocating for the system certifier, and Michael Lambert is a big supporter. He has Gladys's direct phone number. So he's been given a brief to solve the problem in the Class 2 space, and I can assure you he will do it. The other bit of regulation that we need to think about is the certifiers reg, and the certifiers reg is the one that talks about OCs, and it talks about the power of the Building Commissioner, and it also gives authority to the FPA to accredit people as accredited practitioners fire safety. I come to the final one, and that's called the Design and Building Practitioners Regulation. That's the one that you would have seen the public comment closed on January 11. And that's the one that will give anyone in this room who's going to be a hydraulic designer, sprinklers, hydrants, hose reels, it's going to give them their authority. So you'll now be designated. There's a designation. Hopefully you've all had a look at it because it will impact everyone here. No matter which process you go through, whether you go through the recognition scheme that the FPA has done, or you're going to go through the government's process, it ends up with the hydraulics diploma or the fire system design diploma. So in future, if you're operating this industry, you'll need to have one of those qualifications. So at the moment, the government is fixated on 5 years. So you must have 5 years industry experience to be able to be registered with the government. And once you're registered, you'll again pick up that 10 years liability. So I just wanted to sort of highlight to everyone they're the 3 regs we're working on at the moment. 2 of them are already in place, and the 3rd one we will see probably on April 1. The regulation finally come out in its final form. The draft came out. We made there's the FPA. We made a lot of comments about the draft. Probably the other thing I want to talk about is the 3 committees that Nick and I are on. I'm chairing one. The first one is about the building manual, and I'm developing a building manual. If you don't know what a building manual is, it's something that's given by probably the PCA at the end of the process that tells the owner what his obligations are. And in that, the back of that will be a technical section. It's the way it's being set up at the moment, which will give you links to an e-portal. So is everyone familiar with the DPI's e-portal? Okay, we know what DPI is. Okay. What's a portal? Not the last century, Dave, but the one before I think you came from. Okay, so DPI, they're the people that run the Environmental Planning Assessment Act. And a portal is somewhere where all the plans and specifications will go for the building. So if you're an authorised individual, you will have access to all those plans and specifications. So in future, if we want to do a refit on a building, you'll be able to reach back into that building's history and all of that information will be contained electronically. So we're at the cusp of some really significant changes that will impact all of us, except for probably Roger and I who are wandering off into retirement. But certainly there are very big changes afoot, and both the HCAA is part of the process along with FPAA. So I just thought I'd update you on what I knew about the changes to the regs. So probably the 3 committees we're working on: building manual, who does what to whom in the process. So qualifications for everyone in the process, whether you're a fire engineer or someone inspecting and testing fire extinguishers. We've developed a matrix, and those of you who are members of the FPA would have seen that matrix that covers the skill set required for everybody there. And then finally, Steve Durnford is chairing the committee about fixing up fire safety schedules. So any of you who are involved in that process would know that most fire safety schedules are pretty messy at best. And so we've got a brief to have all of those projects completed by September and have the regulations in place by then. So we've got quite a lot of work to do. So thanks, Rod. Anybody got questions of anything I've said?
Well, thanks very much, Bill. Look, I'm impressed with the idea of a centralised portal. I mean, an O&M manual, which typically gets produced as soon as you go to site a couple of years after it's built, they seem to have disappeared. So a central sort of repository for that would be amazing. So that, I mean, it may start as fire. Hopefully that continues on to other services and disciplines as well. So that's good.
Certainly the building manual, we have a brief to create the fire section, but the building manual will ultimately do the hydraulics and every other component within the building. So it will be a brave new world when we get there. So
amazing. Any other questions for Bill? Darren, you're keen to put your hand up?
Not so much a question, more just Bill's covered a whole heap of stuff, what they're doing. Some of the stuff he didn't mention is basically now design and construct, or design on the fly, the building commission is going right after. So all the plans need to be lodged and done before CC. And they've actually gone to the point now, if the building is changed, so there's a variation, work has to stop on that part until the new plans have been all signed off again. So it's a whole new world. I would say by our designer. I'm not going to say the original.
So no, Darren, you're right. The original designer, they're called declared designs, and if the original designer has to be changed, then a new accredited designer or registered designer has to pick that up and be willing to pick it up and be approved by the principal in the process. So design and construct will basically disappear.
Can't say I'm 100% disappointed about that. All right, thanks very much, Bill. We very much appreciate your time to come along tonight. look, let me just scroll through Nick's preso just very quickly. So next meeting, Adelaide Pavilion on the 16th of March. I don't expect we'll have too many here joining in, but look, you're more than welcome to try and jump in if it is online. Thanks again to all sponsors. Now, look, before we do wrap up, the Dodgy Building Award for Paul Angus does get a bottle of wine. He's still, he's around taking photos. Thank you very much for submitting, Paul. Now, we also have a lucky door prize. Another lovely bottle of wine. Now, what I might do is get some of our speakers tonight to pick a number. We've got a list here of all our attendees. Nick apologises. He did have our little lotto ball cage thing, but it's at his house, so it can't be here tonight. So we're doing it old school. Mark Porter, I'll think of a number between 1 and 100. Oh, sorry, let me rephrase that. You tell me a number between 1 and 100, and I'll see if that lucky person is on my list. Paul McDonald. I think he's here, yes. All right, too easy. To be honest, I thought that might have taken a few wriggles. I'm sure Paul won't find it too conflicting. And it's a little weird that both of our winners are sitting next to each other on the same table. All right, well, that concludes it for us tonight, guys. Thank you very much. Oh, actually, sorry, one more thing I wanted to mention. I actually jumped on our website yesterday to look for a consultant. He's in South Australia. What problem was, I found him. He's on there as a member. Zero details bar one landline phone number. A little disappointing. I haven't had a word to him yet about it, but please jump on. It makes us look cheap and nasty if people actually want to go onto our website and find a consultant and there's bugger all information on there. That's not a good look. All you got to do is log in, check your profile, fill in, there's basic things like email and mobile, if that's all you want to put on there, but there are facilities there to give yourself a spruik, tell everyone what you can do and what services you design and what you do and don't. So please it's maybe 10 or 15 minutes. If everyone does that, then the content on that website is much more powerful. So I think that's it, guys. So thanks very much for coming and have a good night.